In the darkest chapters of human history, where suffering and despair seem to overshadow every glimpse of hope, one man discovered a truth so powerful that it has transformed millions of lives ever since. Viktor E. Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, endured the unthinkable horrors of Nazi concentration camps. From starvation to brutality, from the stripping away of dignity to the daily confrontation with death, Frankl experienced the depths of human suffering firsthand. Yet instead of being crushed by despair, he uncovered a profound insight. Even in the most miserable conditions, life holds a meaning, if we choose to find it. In his timeless masterpiece, Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl shares both his personal story of survival and the psychological principles he developed, which later became known as logotherapy. Unlike other theories that focused on pleasure or power as life's main drives, Frankl argued that the deepest human need is the will to meaning. This means that each of us, no matter our circumstances, can endure almost any suffering if we discover a purpose worth living for. Through moving reflections and real-life examples, Frankl reveals that meaning can be found in three essential ways: through our work and achievements, through love and human connection, and even through the courage to face unavoidable suffering with dignity. His message is clear. While we cannot always control what happens to us, we can always choose our response. In this video, we'll explore the key lessons from Frankl's extraordinary book and uncover how his wisdom can help us navigate our own struggles, find direction in uncertainty, and live with deeper purpose. Welcome to Wiser Reads, where we distill life-changing books into insights that inspire growth and resilience.
The Arrival, Shock and Disbelief. When prisoners first arrived at the concentration camps, they were overwhelmed by shock and disbelief. The sudden transition from ordinary life into a world of barbed wire, barking guards, and complete dehumanization was almost impossible to comprehend. Stripped of possessions, clothes, hair, and even their names, they were reduced to numbers, robbed of individuality and dignity in a matter of hours. This initial phase was marked by confusion and numbness. Many could not yet grasp the reality of what lay ahead. Some still clung to a fragile hope that their suffering would be brief. The cruelty of the guards and the brutal routines, however, quickly shattered illusions. The experience of being torn away from family members, often forever, was one of the most painful aspects of arrival. Frankl explains that the mind's first response was a kind of defense mechanism: disbelief. The horror seemed too vast, too surreal to be accepted at once. This psychological shock, paradoxically, allowed prisoners to survive the first brutal days, as the full weight of despair had not yet settled in. The stage of arrival revealed not only the cruelty of the system, but also the human psyche's attempt to shield itself from overwhelming suffering.
The process of stripping away identity. Upon arrival at the concentration camps, prisoners were subjected to a systematic process designed to strip away their identity and humanity. Personal belongings were confiscated, clothing was replaced with uniform garments, and each individual was assigned a number, which became their sole identifier. Names, professions, and past achievements, all markers of identity, were erased. This dehumanization was not only physical, but deeply psychological. Prisoners were forced to conform to strict routines, endure humiliations, and suppress their individuality. Even small acts of personal expression or defiance were punished, reinforcing a sense of helplessness and powerlessness. The goal of this process was to reduce people to mere objects, easily controlled and devoid of personal meaning. Frankl notes that this stripping away of identity caused a profound inner struggle. Some prisoners lost all sense of self, becoming passive and resigned, while others clung to memories, personal values, or small mental rituals to preserve a fragment of their individuality. The ability to maintain inner freedom, even when external freedom was gone, became a crucial factor in psychological survival. Through this process, Frankl illustrates the resilience of the human spirit. Although external identity can be forcibly removed, the inner life, our thoughts, attitudes, and sense of purpose remains a space of freedom that no oppressor can fully conquer.
Life in the camps, suffering, hunger, and disease. Life in the concentration camps was defined by relentless suffering, hunger, and disease. Prisoners endured brutal labor from dawn to dusk, often with little or no food, inadequate clothing, and harsh exposure to the elements. Starvation weakened bodies, making even simple tasks exhausting, while disease spread rapidly in overcrowded, unsanitary conditions. Survival became a daily struggle against both physical and mental deterioration. Frankl emphasizes that the prisoner's suffering was compounded by the unpredictability of camp life. Arbitrary punishments, random selections, and the constant threat of death created an environment of fear and helplessness. Many lost hope, succumbing to despair as their bodies and spirits were systematically worn down. Yet amid this extreme suffering, Frankl observed that those who could find small sources of meaning through memories of loved ones, personal goals, or acts of inner courage were more likely to endure. The human capacity to hold on to hope, even in seemingly hopeless circumstances, proved essential for survival. Ultimately, life in the camps demonstrated that while suffering is unavoidable, the way individuals respond to it, by finding purpose and maintaining inner freedom, determines their resilience. Even in the direst conditions, meaning can provide the strength to survive.
The psychology of prisoners. Stages of mental response. Viktor Frankl identifies distinct psychological stages that prisoners typically experienced upon entering and living in concentration camps. The first stage was shock, which occurred during arrival, when prisoners could hardly comprehend the brutality around them. Numbness and disbelief helped them survive the initial horrors. The second stage, apathy, emerged as a defense mechanism. Faced with constant suffering, hunger, and the loss of personal identity, prisoners often became emotionally numb, withdrawing from both feelings and social connections. This mental detachment helped them endure prolonged hardships without being completely overwhelmed by despair. The final stage was reactive or resignation, which arose when prisoners adapted to the camp's conditions. Some internalized hopelessness, accepting their fates passively, while others found ways to maintain inner freedom through hope, spiritual beliefs, or attachment to a meaningful goal. Frankl observed that those who could retain a sense of purpose or envision a future beyond the camp were more resilient psychologically and physically. Frankl's analysis reveals that while external conditions were horrifying, the human mind has remarkable adaptive capabilities. Even in extreme suffering, individuals could protect their inner selves by finding meaning, clinging to hope, or cultivating a personal sense of responsibility, illustrating that survival depends as much on mental resilience as on physical endurance.
Finding meaning amid suffering. In Finding Meaning Amid Suffering, Viktor Frankl explores how even in the most extreme and painful circumstances, life can retain purpose. While prisoners in concentration camps faced unimaginable horrors, Frankl observed that those who discovered a reason to live, whether through love work, or personal goals were more likely to endure physically and psychologically. Frankl emphasizes that suffering is unavoidable in life, but it is not meaningless. By choosing one's attitude towards suffering, a person can transform pain into a source of growth and dignity. This does not romanticize suffering. Rather, it acknowledges that when pain cannot be avoided, how we respond becomes crucial. Maintaining inner freedom, the ability to decide one's perspective and embrace responsibility, becomes the ultimate act of resilience. He gives examples of prisoners who survived by envisioning reunions with loved ones, pursuing unfinished personal projects, or holding fast to spiritual and moral values. This search for meaning, even in tiny daily acts or thoughts, allowed individuals to preserve hope and a sense of identity despite external dehumanization. Ultimately, Frankl teaches that the key to enduring suffering lies not in changing circumstances, which are often beyond our control, but in finding a why that makes life worth living, no matter the how.
The role of hope and future goals. In The Role of Hope and Future Goals, Viktor Frankl emphasizes that having a sense of purpose and envisioning a future is critical for survival in the most adverse conditions. Prisoners who could imagine life beyond the concentration camps, reuniting with loved ones, completing unfinished work, or pursuing personal ambitions, were better equipped to endure physical and psychological hardships. Hope functioned as a psychological lifeline, offering motivation to persevere even when circumstances seemed hopeless. Frankl observed that this focus on future goals helped prisoners maintain their dignity and sense of self. It countered the crushing effects of dehumanization, apathy, and despair by giving their suffering meaning. In contrast, those who lacked hope or could not envision a meaningful future often succumbed to resignation and despair, highlighting the mind's crucial role in survival. Hope and purposeful goals, however small, became a source of inner freedom. Even when external circumstances could not be controlled, prisoners could control their attitudes, focus their thoughts on meaningful objectives, and sustain a sense of responsibility for their own lives. Frankl's insight reveals a universal truth. The human spirit thrives not through comfort or ease, but through connection to a purpose that transcends suffering, offering resilience in the face of life's greatest challenges.
Moments of beauty, love, and inner freedom. Even in the unimaginable suffering of concentration camps, Viktor Frankl observed that prisoners could experience moments of beauty, love, and inner freedom that transcended their dire circumstances. These experiences were often small and fleeting: a memory of a loved one, a glimpse of nature, or the memory of a cherished work of art. But they provided profound psychological relief and a sense of meaning. Love, in particular, proved to be a powerful source of resilience. Prisoners who maintained emotional connections with family, friends, or even abstract ideals found strength and hope amid despair. Frankl emphasizes that love allows individuals to see the essence of another human being beyond physical suffering, giving life profound significance even in its most brutal moments. Inner freedom, the ability to choose one's attitude regardless of external conditions, was another crucial form of liberation. While external freedom could be stripped away, prisoners retained the power to decide how they would respond to suffering, humiliation, and loss. Frankl's reflections reveal that even in extreme adversity, the human spirit can access transcendent experiences. Beauty, love, and inner freedom are not mere luxuries. They are vital tools for surviving, maintaining dignity, and finding meaning in life when everything else seems lost.
Indifference and brutality in daily life. In Indifference and Brutality in Daily Life, Viktor Frankl examines how the constant exposure to cruelty, callousness, and dehumanization shaped the psychological experience of prisoners in concentration camps. Guards' arbitrary punishments, the sight of suffering around them, and the lack of compassion from fellow inmates created an environment where brutality and indifference became normalized. This daily reality tested not only physical endurance, but also moral and emotional resilience. Frankl observed that repeated exposure to indifference could erode empathy and lead to emotional numbness. Prisoners sometimes adopted a survival strategy of detachment, shielding themselves from the pain of others as well as their own suffering. Yet those who allowed small acts of humanity, sharing food, offering words of comfort, or maintaining moral integrity to guide their actions were able to preserve a sense of dignity and meaning. The chapter underscores a crucial insight. While external circumstances may force individuals to confront brutality, the inner response remains a matter of choice. Maintaining empathy, compassion, and moral values amid cruelty becomes a form of resistance and an assertion of inner freedom. Frankl demonstrates that even in a world dominated by indifference, meaning can be found in acts of conscience and in the refusal to surrender one's humanity.
Survival through purpose, the will to meaning. In Survival Through Purpose, the Will to Meaning, Viktor Frankl highlights that the central force enabling prisoners to endure the horrors of concentration camps was not pleasure, power, or luck, but the search for meaning. He observed that those who had a clear sense of purpose, whether a goal to reunite with loved ones, a project to complete, or a commitment to a personal or spiritual ideal, were far more likely to survive physically and psychologically. Frankl emphasizes that meaning can be discovered in every situation, even under extreme suffering. While prisoners could not control the cruelty around them, they could control their attitudes, decisions, and responses. By focusing on a why to live for, individuals gained the resilience to bear almost any how. Purpose acted as an internal compass, guiding behavior, maintaining hope, and preserving dignity. It transformed suffering from an overwhelming burden into a challenge that could be faced with courage. Frankl's insight demonstrates that human beings are not defined solely by their circumstances, but by their capacity to choose, to find significance, and to live intentionally. The will to meaning, he argues, is the ultimate source of psychological survival and the key to a fulfilling life, even amid adversity.
The essence of logotherapy. In The Essence of Logotherapy, Viktor Frankl introduces the core principles of the psychological approach he developed after surviving the concentration camps. Unlike traditional psychotherapy, which often focuses on the past or on eliminating symptoms, logotherapy centers on the future and the search for meaning. Frankl posits that the primary motivation in human life is not pleasure or power, but the will to meaning, the desire to find purpose even in the most challenging circumstances. Logotherapy asserts that life has meaning under all conditions, and that every individual can discover it through work, love, or the attitude taken toward unavoidable suffering. When people lose sight of meaning, they may experience existential frustration or an existential vacuum, leading to emptiness, anxiety, or despair. A key idea of logotherapy is that humans cannot always control external events, but they can choose their responses and attitudes. By focusing on responsibility, personal values, and a sense of purpose, individuals can navigate adversity while maintaining dignity and inner freedom. Frankl's approach empowers people to become active participants in their own lives, rather than passive victims of circumstance.
It offers a roadmap for resilience, emphasizing that meaning is both discoverable and essential for psychological and spiritual well-being, even in the face of suffering.
The will to meaning versus the will to pleasure power. In The Will to Meaning versus the Will to Pleasure Power, Viktor Frankl contrasts his concept of the will to meaning with other theories of human motivation. While Freud emphasized the pursuit of pleasure and Adler focused on the drive for power, Frankl argued that the deepest human need is to find purpose in life. Without meaning, pleasure and power alone cannot sustain true fulfillment or resilience, especially in the face of suffering. Frankl observed that a life centered solely on pleasure or dominance often leads to emptiness, frustration, or despair. In contrast, those guided by a sense of meaning experience greater psychological stability and an enduring sense of direction. Meaning acts as an internal compass, helping individuals navigate life's inevitable hardships with dignity and hope. Crucially, meaning is not imposed from the outside. It must be discovered by each individual through responsibility, personal values, and purposeful action. Even in extreme suffering, one can choose an attitude or a course of action that reflects deeper significance. Frankl demonstrates that pursuing a life of meaning rather than mere gratification or control fosters resilience, inner freedom, and authentic fulfillment, making the human spirit capable of enduring almost any challenge.
Discovering meaning in life. In Discovering Meaning in Life, Viktor Frankl explores the practical ways individuals can find purpose in their existence, even amid challenges. He identifies three primary paths to meaning: through work or accomplishment, by experiencing love and connection, and through the courageous acceptance of suffering when it is unavoidable. Each path allows a person to transcend circumstances and live intentionally. Meaning through work involves dedicating oneself to tasks or goals that contribute to society, personal growth, or creative expression. Love, according to Frankl, is the ultimate way to grasp another human being's essence, allowing individuals to experience fulfillment beyond physical presence. Even in situations of suffering, meaning can be found by choosing one's attitude and demonstrating courage, dignity, and responsibility. Frankl emphasizes that meaning is unique to each individual. It cannot be prescribed by others or measured against universal standards. Rather, it must be discovered personally, often through reflection, responsibility, and action. Life's significance is realized in how we respond to circumstances rather than in the circumstances themselves. Ultimately, Frankl teaches that discovering meaning transforms challenges into opportunities for growth, resilience, and inner freedom, allowing individuals to live fully and purposefully, even in the face of adversity.
Existential vacuum, emptiness in modern life, from man's search for meaning. In Existential Vacuum, Emptiness in Modern Life, Viktor Frankl examines a widespread psychological condition that affects people in times of comfort and freedom, the sense of emptiness and meaninglessness. Unlike prisoners in concentration camps, many modern individuals face an existential vacuum, a feeling of boredom, apathy, or inner void that arises when life lacks purpose. This vacuum can manifest as depression, addiction, or a pursuit of pleasure and power without deeper fulfillment. Frankl argues that the existential vacuum is a consequence of society focusing on material success, external achievements, or pleasure rather than personal responsibility and meaning. When individuals are not actively engaged in discovering or pursuing purpose, they risk feeling lost, anxious, and disconnected from life. The solution, according to Frankl, is for each person to take responsibility for finding their own unique meaning. This involves identifying goals, committing to values, cultivating relationships, and embracing challenges. By actively seeking purpose, individuals can fill the vacuum,
regain direction, and experience satisfaction that transcends superficial gratification. Ultimately, the existential vacuum highlights the human need for significance. Meaning, not comfort or pleasure, provides true resilience, fulfillment, and the inner strength to face life's inevitable hardships.
Responsibility and freedom in shaping one's destiny. In Responsibility and Freedom in Shaping One's Destiny, Viktor Frankl emphasizes that true human freedom is found not in external circumstances, but in our ability to choose our attitudes and responses. Even when life imposes suffering or constraints, individuals retain the power to decide how they will face each situation. This inner freedom is inseparable from personal responsibility. We are accountable for the choices we make and the meaning we create in our lives. Frankl argues that embracing responsibility is the key to discovering purpose. By acknowledging that each person has a unique role to play and tasks to fulfill, we move beyond passivity and resignation. Freedom without responsibility leads to aimlessness, whereas responsibility directs freedom toward meaningful action. He illustrates that even in the direst circumstances, such as the concentration camps, prisoners who exercised this freedom and accepted responsibility for their attitudes and actions were more resilient, maintaining dignity and hope. Ultimately, Frankl's message is that destiny is shaped not solely by external events, but how we respond to them. By choosing meaningful actions and cultivating a sense of purpose, we assert control over our inner lives, transform suffering into growth, and live fully despite life's uncertainties.
The uniqueness of each individual's purpose. In The Uniqueness of Each Individual's Purpose, Viktor Frankl emphasizes that meaning in life is deeply personal and cannot be universally prescribed. Each person has a unique calling or task, shaped by their circumstances, abilities, and experiences. What gives life purpose for one individual may hold no significance for another. Recognizing and embracing this uniqueness is essential to living a fulfilled and resilient life. Frankl explains that discovering one's purpose often requires reflection, self-awareness, and the courage to take responsibility for choices. Meaning is not found passively. It emerges through active engagement with life, whether through work, relationships, creative expression, or moral and spiritual commitments. Even in suffering, individuals can find a distinct purpose by determining how to respond with dignity, courage, and responsibility. This perspective underscores the human capacity for freedom and self-determination. While external conditions may be restrictive or painful, individuals can exercise the power to shape their inner lives and pursue what is uniquely significant to them. Ultimately, Frankl teaches that fulfillment and resilience arise not from comparing ourselves to others or following predefined paths, but from embracing our singular purpose. Each life has its own meaning, and it is through recognizing and pursuing this uniqueness that we experience true inner freedom and lasting satisfaction.
By listening to Man's Search for Meaning, we've explored Viktor Frankl's extraordinary journey through unimaginable suffering and the profound lessons he drew from it. Frankl's insights show us that even in life's darkest moments, meaning can be found, and with it, hope, resilience, and inner freedom. The central message is clear. While we cannot always control the events in our lives, we can choose our response and create purpose from our circumstances. Whether through work, love, or the courage to face unavoidable suffering, each of us has the power to shape our destiny and find significance in everyday life. Frankl's experience in the concentration camps reminds us that meaning is not abstract. It is deeply personal, unique, and essential to survival, growth, and fulfillment.
If there's one takeaway from this book, it's that life is worth living even in the hardest times, and that we each carry the capacity to transform pain into purpose. If this message resonates with you, make sure to join Wiser Reads, where we uncover life-changing insights from the world's most inspiring books. Subscribe, and let's explore together the wisdom that can transform your life, one page at a time.